I was never enough for my mother. No matter how hard I tried, how much I accomplished, how deeply I loved her, none of it could compare to the way she adored my older brother, Ethan. Ethan, the golden child, the firstborn, the pride of our family. He was strong, charming, and everything my mother had ever wanted in a son. And then there was me, Daniel, the quiet, observant younger brother who always seemed to live in Ethan's shadow. I didn't always notice the difference in how she treated us when we were little. To me, he was just my big brother, the one who taught me how to ride a bike, who let me tag along with his friends even when I slowed them down. He was my hero. But as we got older, I started to see it. The way Mom's eyes lit up when Ethan entered a room. The way she would defend him, even when he was clearly in the wrong. When he came home late from parties, reeking of alcohol, she'd smile and shake her head, saying, "Boys will be boys." But if I so much as forgot to take out the trash, I'd get a lecture about responsibility. She never missed one of his football games, never let him go without new cleats, the best gear. But when I won a regional science fair, she barely glanced at the certificate before tossing it on the kitchen counter. "Good job, Danny," she had said absent-mindedly, already moving on to something more important, Ethan. It hurt. Of course it did. But what could I do? I worked hard in school, studied late into the night while Ethan coasted through on charm alone. And when the time came for us to go to college, he got into a good school on a football scholarship. I got into an even better one on pure academic merit. But while Mom boasted about Ethan to anyone who would listen, she barely acknowledged my acceptance letter. And when I left home to chase a future she never seemed to care about, I told myself I didn't need her approval. I lied. Ethan struggled after college. He lost his scholarship after an injury and never quite found his footing afterward. He drifted from job to job, always with some new scheme, some new excuse for why things weren't working out. And yet, through it all, Mom never lost faith in him. I'd hear from her now and then, but only in brief, obligatory phone calls. She never asked about my work, about the company I was slowly building from the ground up. She never cared that I was sacrificing sleep, sanity, everything, to turn my ideas into something real. Meanwhile, Ethan still lived at home. Mom paid his bills, cooked his meals, made excuses for him at every turn. "He just needs time," she would say. Time. I built my empire while Ethan wasted his. It took years of relentless work, of late nights and early mornings, but I did it. The business I started in a tiny apartment with nothing but an old laptop and a dream became something real. Something powerful. And then, one day, I looked at my bank account and realized something staggering. I was rich. Not just comfortable. Not just successful. I was wealthy in a way our family had never been. And for the first time in my life, I had something Ethan didn't. Mom must have heard. Because suddenly, she started calling again. At first, I ignored her calls. After years of being treated like an afterthought, I wasn't in any rush to answer. But she was persistent. Every few days, my phone would light up with her name, her voicemails growing longer, more desperate. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. When I picked up, her voice was softer than I remembered, almost hesitant. "Danny," she said, as if testing the name on her tongue. "It's been so long. I've missed you." I leaned back in my office chair, staring out at the city skyline. She missed me? That was new. Really? I said, unable to keep the skepticism from my voice. There was a pause, then a sigh. "Danny, I know things haven't always been easy between us. But I want to fix that. I want to see you." She wanted to see me. Not when I was struggling through school. Not when I was working 80-hour weeks to get my business off the ground. Not when I was alone in a new city, desperately trying to make something of myself. No. She wanted to see me now, when my name was in magazines, when my company was on the rise, when I had something she could be proud of. I should have hung up. I should have told her it was too late. But some part of me, some stupid, wounded part of me, still craved her approval. So I said yes. We met at a small cafe near my office, the kind of place where old money sipped lattes without looking at the prices. She was already seated when I arrived, stirring her tea with delicate precision. When she saw me, she smiled, the same warm, loving smile I had watched her give Ethan 1,000 times. I had never realized how much I wanted to be on the receiving end of it. "Oh, Danny," she breathed, reaching for my hand. "You look so, grown up." "I'm 32, I said dryly, pulling my hand back. "I should hope so." She laughed, as if I had made a joke. I waited for her to get to the point. "I heard about your company," she finally said. "I am so proud of you." Proud. It was the first time I had ever heard those words from her. They should have meant something. But all I could think about was how hollow they sounded. She went on, talking about my success as if she had always believed in me. As if she had been cheering me on from the sidelines instead of forgetting I existed. And then, slowly, carefully, she brought up Ethan. "You know he's been struggling," she said, eyes full of carefully practiced sorrow. "He's had a rough time finding work." I bet he had. Ethan had never held a real job for more than a few months. "He just needs a little help," she continued. "And I thought, now that you're doing so well." There it was. I almost laughed. She wasn't here because she missed me. She wasn't here because she was proud. She was here because she wanted money. I set my cup down with deliberate calm. "How much?" She blinked. "What? How much does Ethan need?" She hesitated, as if embarrassed. "He just needs enough to get back on his feet. Maybe a loan, just to help him get started." I stared at her. "Mom, be honest with me. If Ethan had made something of himself and I was the one struggling, would you be sitting here asking him to help me?" She recoiled, as if I had slapped her. "That's not fair." "But it's the truth," I said quietly. She didn't deny it. I took a slow breath, weighing my words carefully. "I'm not giving Ethan money." "Danny, please," she whispered. "He's your brother." I met her gaze, my voice steady. "And I was your son." For a moment, she said nothing. Then she sighed, shaking her head. "I just thought you'd be different." Different. I had spent my whole life being different. Different from the son she wanted. Different from the boy she adored. And now, when I finally had something she needed, she wanted me to change again, to become the kind, generous brother who would take care of Ethan, just like she always had. I wasn't going to do it. "Take care, Mom," I said, rising from my chair. "Give my regards to Ethan." And then I walked away, leaving her sitting there in the cafe, stirring a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I had finally closed the door on years of being overlooked, of being the lesser son. I was wrong. Mom wasn't done with me, not yet. It started small. A few more calls, a couple of texts, each one carefully crafted to sound casual. "Just checking in," she would write. "Hope you're doing well." At first, I ignored them. But she was relentless, slipping into my life like water through a crack. Then, one evening, she showed up at my office. I had stayed late, going over contracts, when my assistant buzzed in. "There's a woman here asking for you," she said, her voice hesitant. "She says she's your mother." I could have told her to send Mom away. But something in me, a deep, tired part of me, wanted to see her. When I stepped into the lobby, she was waiting near the windows, arms crossed. She looked smaller than I remembered, as if the years had finally caught up to her. "Danny," she said, relieved. "I was hoping you'd see me." I didn't speak, just motioned for her to follow me to my office. She sat across from my desk, glancing around at the sleek furniture, the framed awards, the polished floors. "This is impressive," she admitted. I waited. She sighed. "I know you don't want to hear from me. And I know you think I only came to you because of Ethan." I didn't correct her, because that was exactly what I thought. "But that's not the only reason," she continued. "I miss you. I miss my son." I studied her carefully. "And Ethan?" Her eyes flickered. "He's having a hard time." I almost laughed. Ethan had been having a hard time for the last decade. "He lost his apartment," she added, watching me closely. I leaned back. "So let me guess. You want me to pay his rent?" She hesitated. "He doesn't need much. Just enough to." "No." The word was final. Her mouth tightened. "Danny, you have more money than you could ever need. Why won't you help him?" I exhaled slowly. "Because he had every opportunity to help himself." She flinched, but I didn't stop. I worked for everything I have. I sacrificed, I struggled, I earned this. Ethan never tried. He sat back and watched you make excuses for him, and now you want me to do the same? Tears welled in her eyes. You don't understand what it's like to watch your child fail. I stared at her. You're right. But I do understand what it's like to watch your mother pretend you don't exist. Silence. I expected anger. I expected more guilt, more manipulation. But she just looked at me, truly looked at me, and for the first time, I thought I saw something break in her. She stood slowly, smoothing her skirt. I see, she murmured. I didn't say anything. She hesitated at the door. I hope one day, you can forgive me. And then she left. I didn't hear from her for months. For the first time in my life, I felt free. No more comparisons. No more being the second choice. I focused on my work, on my life, on things that actually mattered. Then, one night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. Hello? There was silence, then a small, broken voice. Danny? It was Mom. I gripped the phone tighter. What's wrong? She sniffled. It's Ethan. My heart didn't sink. It didn't even waver. What about him? I asked evenly. He's gone, she whispered. I stiffened. Gone? He left. Packed a bag and disappeared. I don't know where he is. He won't answer my calls. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. Mom. I don't have anyone else, she said, her voice cracking. Danny, please. The years of neglect, of dismissal, of being treated as an afterthought, all of it clashed with the instinct to help, to be the good son. I wanted to tell her it wasn't my problem. But she was crying. And for some reason, I still cared. I could have told her it wasn't my problem. I could have told her that Ethan had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. But when she said, I don't have anyone else, something inside me cracked. Because, despite everything, she was still my mother. And even after all the years of neglect, I still wasn't heartless. Where was he last? I asked, my voice level. She let out a shuddering breath. He was staying with a friend, but they kicked him out a week ago. He called me a few days ago asking for money, but when I said no, he hung up on me. I haven't heard from him since. I rubbed my temple. He'll turn up. I'm scared, Danny, she whispered. He's never been on his own before. And that was the problem, wasn't it? Ethan had never learned how to survive without someone bailing him out. Still, despite everything, I didn't want to see him on the street. I'll make some calls, I finally said. But that's it. I'm not getting dragged into this. She exhaled shakily. Thank you. It was the first time she had ever thanked me for anything. Finding Ethan wasn't hard. People like him always had a trail, unpaid debts, burnt bridges, desperate pleas for help. I tracked him down 2 days later, living out of a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. When I arrived, he was sitting on the curb, smoking a cigarette, looking thinner than I remembered. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair a mess. When he saw me, he scoffed. Let me guess. Mom sent you. She's worried. He smirked. Of course she is. I studied him. What happened to you, Ethan? He shrugged. Life. No, I said. This isn't life. This is the result of bad choices. He rolled his eyes. Spare me the lecture, Danny. I'm not here to lecture you, I said. I just want to know, what's your plan? He laughed bitterly. Plan? That's rich, coming from you. What, you think I can just pull myself up by the bootstraps like you did? Yeah, I said. I do. He went quiet. Then, after a moment, he muttered, I screwed up, didn't I? I didn't answer. He rubbed his face. I thought. I don't know. I thought things would always work out. That Mom would always be there. That something would come along to save me. I sighed. No one is coming to save you, Ethan. He looked up, his eyes hollow. You did. I hesitated. Then I shook my head. No, I didn't. I came here to tell you that you have 2 options, get your life together, or keep spiraling until there's nothing left. He swallowed hard. And if I choose the second? I stared at him for a long moment. Then that's on you. He looked away. For the first time in his life, he had no one left to rely on. No safety net. No excuses. Just himself. And for the first time, I think he realized how terrifying that was. I gave him enough money for a bus ticket. Not for a hotel, not for food, just enough to get him to a cousin in another state who had offered him a fresh start. He took it without a word. I didn't know if he'd actually use it. I didn't know if he'd change. But I knew one thing, I had done all I could. And that was enough. Mom tried to reach out more after that. She started calling every week, asking how I was, telling me about her life, as if trying to rewrite the past. At first, I resented it. But over time, I realized something, she was trying. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough too. One evening, she called and said, "Danny, I'm proud of you." For once, I believed her. I had spent my whole life chasing her approval, wanting her to see me the way she saw Ethan. But now, I didn't need it. I had built something without her. I had found success, happiness, purpose, without needing to be the favorite son. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. Ethan never came back. Mom still asks about him sometimes, but there's a sadness in her voice now, a regret she can't quite voice. I don't know if he'll ever turn his life around. But I do know this, I'm done saving him. And for the first time in my life, I'm free. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.